Breaking news tonight. A 9-0 unanimous decision from the United States Supreme Court has just sent shockwaves across the entire country in an era defined by political division, partisan gridlock, and bitter legal battles. All 9 justices, every single one, have agreed on a ruling with massive constitutional implications. This isn't just another court decision. This ruling touches the very core of constitutional law, and it could fundamentally reshape how America views the balance of power between the federal government and the people. When was the last time you saw the Supreme Court unite like this? When every justice, from the most conservative to the most liberal, agrees, something monumental just happened. So why did every single justice agree? What was at stake? And what does this mean for the Constitution, for your rights, and for the future of government power in America? Buckle up, because we're about to break it all down step by step. And trust me, you're going to want to hear this. Let's rewind for a moment and talk about what triggered this historic ruling in the first place. The case began when federal regulators pushed the limits of their authority in a way that raised serious red flags about constitutional boundaries. Citizens and states across the nation challenged the move, arguing that it violated basic rights, protected under the Constitution, rights that are supposed to be untouchable no matter who's in power. The controversy centered around whether unelected federal agencies had overstepped their legal reach, bypassing Congress and imposing rules that affected millions of Americans without proper legislative approval. The lower courts were deeply divided on the issue. Some sided with the federal government, saying the agencies were acting within their authority. Others ruled against them, warning that this kind of power grab set a dangerous precedent. The case climbed through the judicial system, and eventually it landed on the desk of the highest court in the land. And that's when the Supreme Court stepped in and made a statement that couldn't be clearer. S.O. What did the court actually rule? Here's where it gets powerful. The Supreme Court unanimously ruled that the federal government exceeded its legal reach. All 9 justices appointed by presidents from both parties, representing a wide spectrum of judicial philosophy, reaffirmed that the Constitution, not federal agencies, sets the limits of authority in this country. They made it crystal clear that when agencies act without proper constitutional backing, they cross a line that cannot be tolerated. This decision effectively stops a growing trend of executive overreach and re-enters power back where the founders intended it to be, in the hands of the people and their elected representatives. The court didn't mince words. They reinforced the idea that no branch of government, no matter how well-intentioned, can operate outside the boundaries set by the Constitution. This wasn't a narrow technical ruling. This was a bold reassertion of fundamental constitutional principles that have been under pressure for decades. Now let's talk about why a 9-0 ruling is such a big deal. A unanimous decision from the Supreme Court is almost unheard of in today's polarized climate. We're used to seeing 5-4 splits, controversial dissents, and bitter divisions that mirror the political battles happening across the country. But this time, every justice agreed that unity sends a powerful, undeniable message. When it comes to the Constitution, there's still common ground. Even the court's most liberal justices agreed that this issue crossed the line that no administration, no matter their political affiliation, should be allowed to ignore. This wasn't about left versus right. This wasn't about Democrat versus Republican. This was about the rule of law, the separation of powers, and the limits that the Constitution places on government authority. When all 9 justices stand together, it's a wake-up call. It tells the federal government, state governments, and every American that some principles are non-negotiable. The Constitution isn't a suggestion. It's the supreme law of the land, and the court just reminded everyone of that fact in the most emphatic way possible. Within hours of the ruling, the Department of Justice issued a statement expressing what they called deep concern over the decision. Federal agencies across the board now face immediate reviews of policies tied to this ruling. Officials are scrambling to figure out what this means for their regulatory power moving forward. There's genuine worry within the federal bureaucracy that this precedent could limit their ability to enforce future regulations, especially in areas where they've traditionally acted with broad discretion. But here's the thing, for constitutionalists, for people who believe in limited government and checks and balances, that's exactly the point. The ruling isn't meant to the government's ability to function. It's meant to ensure that the government operates within the boundaries set by the Constitution. It's a reminder that regulatory power doesn't come from the whims of unelected officials. It comes from the people through their elected representatives in Congress. The DOJ's concern is understandable from their perspective, but for millions of Americans who've watched federal overreach expand year after year, this ruling is a long overdue correction. Across the nation, lawmakers reacted fast, and the political storm is already brewing. Constitutional advocates and conservative leaders are calling this a historic win for balance and freedom. They're celebrating it as a return to constitutional first principles, a victory for federalism, and a check on the administrative state that's grown more powerful with each passing decade. On the other side, critics are warning that the ruling could tie the government's hands in future crisis, making it harder to respond quickly to emergencies or complex regulatory challenges. Some lawmakers are already drafting legislation to clarify the scope of agency authority, trying to work within the new boundaries set by the court. The ruling is fueling intense debate about the role of unelected bureaucrats in shaping American law. Should agencies have broad discretion to act in the name of efficiency and expertise? Or should every significant policy decision go through the democratic process, even if it's slower and messier? That's the core question now dominating political discourse, and this 9-0 decision just tipped the scales heavily toward the latter. Legal experts are already calling this 9-0 decision one of the most significant constitutional rulings in decade. It sets a powerful precedent that will echo through the courts for years to come. This ruling strengthens judicial skepticism toward executive actions that sidestep Congress and try to impose major policy changes through administrative fiat. In other words, the court is reminding every branch of government that separation of powers isn't optional. It's not a technicality, it's the foundation of our constitutional system. Scholars are predicting that this case will be cited in countless future legal battles. Anytime a federal agency tries to assert broad regulatory authority without clear congressional backing, this ruling will be there as a roadblock. It empowers lower courts to push back more aggressively against executive overreach. It gives states and individuals stronger legal footing to challenge federal actions, and it sends a message to future administrations. If you want to make significant policy changes, go through Congress. Follow the constitutional process. Don't try to shortcut democracy through the regulatory state. But the implications of this decision go far beyond the immediate case. This ruling could ripple into countless future legal battles, from property rights to the Second Amendment, from environmental regulations to healthcare mandate. It reasserts the idea that constitutional interpretation cannot shift with political win. The Constitution isn't a living document that changes meaning based on who's in power. It's a fixed set of principles that limits government and protects individual liberty. The message is clear. Government must stay within its constitutional boundaries. No matter who's in charge, no matter what the crisis of the day is, and no matter how popular or unpopular a particular policy might be, this decision is a win for everyone who believes that the rule of law should be stronger than the rule of bureaucrat. It's a reminder that the founders designed a system with checks and balances for a reason, to prevent any one branch from becoming too powerful and to protect the people from government overreach. So, what happens next? That's the question everyone's asking right now. All eyes are on how federal agencies will respond and whether Congress steps in to rewrite or clarify certain laws to comply with this new constitutional standard. States may follow suit, pushing back on regulations they believe violate this new precedent. We could see a wave of legal challenges targeting agency rules that have been in place for years, maybe even decade. This ruling gives states and citizens the ammunition they need to fight back against federal overreach in ways that weren't possible before. And here's the bigger picture. We could be entering a new chapter of constitutional realignment, one that strengthens checks and balances across the board. This isn't just about one case or one agency. This is about reclaiming the proper balance of power in our republic. It's about restoring the principle that the people, through their elected representatives, are the ones who make the laws, not unelected bureaucrats sitting in offices in Washington, D.C. tonight. S9-0 decision proves something that many Americans were starting to doubt. The Constitution still stands above politics. In a time when everything feels partisan, when every issue seems to divide us, the Supreme Court showed us that all 9 justices can still agree on one thing: the limits of power matter. Whether you support or oppose this specific outcome, whether you lean left or right, this ruling is a reminder that our system of government was designed to protect liberty by limiting power. That's not a partisan idea. That's an American idea. And tonight, the highest court in the land reaffirmed it in the strongest possible terms. This is a moment to pay attention because decisions like this don't happen every day. Stay tuned as we track how this decision reshapes the legal and constitutional landscape of America in the weeks, months, and years ahead. Subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell, and stay informed because the fight to preserve the Constitution, to defend your rights, and to hold government accountable never ends. This is a story that's just beginning, and you're going to want to follow every twist and turn. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next